Hello. Okay, so today I have such a big honor and a big treat to be again with Jason Engledoe, who I interviewed last year for Rebecoming the One, the original Rebecoming the One in 2022. And I reached out to Jason again to be part of Rebecoming the One 2023 because the interview that we did last year was so deeply moving for me. I think I cried 3 times. I can't remember. It was, I think it might have been the only interview out of 42 interviews where I cried, I think. But I definitely cried 3 times. So, deeply, deeply, deeply moving. And the whole year since then, I've wanted to reconnect with you to go more deeply into this topic that you said also that you would really like to discuss, which is the topic of ancestral healing. And there are many layers that I can imagine us diving into, and many ways I see the whole topic of ancestral healing being so key to the healing of our world in general in this time, and then also specifically with regard to the healing of our relationship to gender and sexuality. So thank you so much, Jason, for agreeing to do this again and for being here and for being you more than anything. And before we begin, I read your bio so people know a little bit about you. Okay, Jason Engledoe is a mentor and facilitator to individuals, groups, and organizations. He has lived and is educated in 3 countries outside of South Africa, including Germany, England, and Taiwan in the Republic of China. With a diverse background in education, entrepreneurship, martial arts, international trade, and investment promotion, he now lives in South Africa to be part of the change. Through his company Unity and You and collaborative efforts, he is a companion to those who are committed to their own journey of developing agency, self-empowered approaches to resilience, self-discovery, growth, healing, and transformation. He is the co-designer and co-facilitator of a program called Rooting Through Change, which helps people cultivate tools for resilience during times of rapid change. He co-facilitates laughter yoga with his life partner, Wendy. He is the founder and facilitator of deep listening circles for all bodies and racial affinity groups for bodies of mixed ancestries, and offers his services to public and corporate groups. Jason is a certified practitioner in ancestral healing with ancestral medicine. The methodology he uses is not prescriptive, but rather is focused on helping developing awareness of the client's own innate natural wisdom, to meet the client where they are and to be driven by where the greatest need is from the client's perspective, not his own. This is an agency-centered approach. Thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much, Martha. And you really, greetings to you and your people and the listeners and those people who are tuning in to the symposium. I'm really honored to be part and to add a voice to this discussion and exploration. And thank you so much for your kind words at the start. And I'm really looking forward to what might unfold in this exploration. So I invite everyone to bring curiosity and an open heart, as we converse here together. So if that's fine with you, like we did last year, Martha, I believe I want to make sure that this is not just a piece of intellectual entertainment, like watching another documentary or film or listening to another podcast. And I really would like us to be intentional. And so I'll just guide us in a little practice to just, drop into our bodies and into the present moment, if that's okay. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, just inviting everyone to, if it's accessible to you, you might want to close your eyes, or if not, just cast a soft gaze into your hands in your lap in front of you. And just connect with the breath as it is. And inviting everyone to drop into presence and drop into the body. And invite other centers of intelligence, not just the head, to be here fully. It's noticing the head, neck, and shoulders. And allowing any places of tension just soften. And bringing awareness to our arms and hands. And allowing with each exhalation, out breath, just allowing the out breath to prolong a little more. Noticing your spine, the top of your neck, all the way down to your tailbone. Bringing awareness to the heart space. And allowing the heart to open even more. And bringing awareness to the belly. And with the next out breath, just allowing the belly to soften. And bringing attention to your hips and legs, feeling your feet connected to the ground. Feeling yourself being held by the earth below you. And so as we come to the close of this practice shortly, just inviting us all to take the biggest breath we've taken all day. And when you exhale, slowly just allow yourself to relax. And from this place of being more fully in the moment, in the present moment, fully in our bodies, I'd like to invite everyone, if there's one thing that resonates, lean into that a little more. Make it your own, personalize it as per your own context in your own life. Equally, if there's something where you sense in your body or elsewhere where there's a dissonance, a disagreement, lean into that too. There might be wisdom there that wants to reveal itself. And so the intention that I would like to hold is that this conversation meets you all well, and even if it offers just one thing that can be applied with value to your lives, that would be mission accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. So, yeah, we were chatting about a title for this discussion, and we said ancestral healing for personal and family healing as a catalyst for cultural repair. And I'd like to start with a quote from the lovely Maya Angelou, who says, "If we don't know where we come from, we won't know where we're going." And in addition, welcoming the sacred feminine. So a quote by Miriam Rose, an elder, says, "When we heal ourselves, we heal our ancestors from wounds that run deeply in our family. And when we heal our ancestors, we heal the world from wounds that run deeply in humanity." So from that place, these beautiful words of wisdom from two women's work that I really appreciate and respect. As Martha said, my name's Jason. I'm calling in from Hamisa, the traditional lands of the San and the Ku, now known as the Cape in South Africa. So my ancestors hail from the 4 cardinal directions, with 2/3 of my ancestry coming from Europe. They also come from South and Southeast Asia. From the San and the Ku people, the oldest living human population on the face of the earth, as well as the Andean and Oceania regions. So the Rainbow Tribe truly lives inside my blood, bones, and DNA. And because of this, I've learned to navigate this beautiful life as chameleon. So if I may, before handing over to Martha, feel free to interject at any time. We will allow this conversation to flow just naturally. I've learned from one of my teachers, a leader in collective trauma healing, Thomas Hubel, that we are born into a complexity of trauma, early childhood trauma, past life trauma, and intergenerational trauma. And then in 2017, as part of postgraduate studies in eco-social design with Gaia University, the good people there, I first learned about the growing field of research called epigenetics. And there's a landmark piece of research around Holocaust survivors in 2015 that, if some of your listeners are not aware of that, I'd recommend you look that up. And in simple terms, what epigenetics has been finding is that we inherit trauma from the challenges and burdens of our ancestors. But we also inherit gifts, strengths, and resiliencies and compassion from our people. It's interesting, when I learned in 2017 about epigenetics, the negative bias is so strong that I kept on leaning towards the challenge and the heaviness of only inheriting the trauma. And I'd often needed to remind myself that we also inherit medicines and gifts and resiliencies from our people. And so I'd like us to hold awareness of both of that as we explore through this conversation. So one of the antidotes to meeting the trauma, the challenges and burdens that many of us are down lineage from, is to more fully embrace, embody, and dial up the gifts we also inherit from our people. And so, Martha had mentioned while sharing my bio, laughter yoga. In fact, we're going to be facilitating with Wendy, my life partner. Just this week, we'll be facilitating some deep listening circles or compassionate listening circles and laughter yoga, because the work and sometimes of healing and transformation and self-discovery can feel quite heavy and intimidating and overwhelming for me and for the spaces that I hold for people as a facilitator. And so we need to be intentional about some of the lighter emotions, some of the gifts that we inherit from our people that have helped them navigate challenging times in their lives. And so joy, compassion, love, and laughter are some potent gifts that I inherit from my people. And I aim to share that with as many people as I can and try to bring it into my work wherever possible. It's important to welcome a little bit of levity when we grapple sometimes with such challenging and burdensome issues. Yeah. Maybe I'll have a breather there for now, and before I talk a little bit more about the framework of ancestral healing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, and that's my being was going in two different directions at the same time as you were talking. One was wanting to hear the framework, the how and the what that you actually, how do you do this? So yes, I would love to go down that road. And the other part of my being was thinking about my own personal current journey with these things. Maybe I can share a little bit just so that we can have something to work with as we talk about this whole framework. And it's coming up, so I feel like it's supposed to be said.
Yeah,
So I will.
lovely.
Yeah, which is that so my dad died December 12th of 2022. So just we're recording this at the very end of March of 2023. And so it's been about a little over 3 months since he died. And since he died, my family has been going through a huge amount of healing. I mean, deep, deep, deep generation level, many layers and ways of healing. And it's profound. I mean, it's really amazing. But so one key thing that's coming up for me as you're talking about bringing in the gifts is also, I'll just name this one little thing, and then I would love to open it back up to you. So my dad, so I live in the United States, but ethnically, I'm very European, but I was raised very internationally. So I was born in Bangkok, Thailand. I grew up in Bangladesh, Pakistan, Kenya. My dad lived in Pretoria, South Africa when I was in college. So I've, spent time in South Africa also, and all over the world. I mean, Mauritania, all over. Anyway, so my dad was living in Thailand when he died, but we as a family decided we wanted his ashes to be taken to India, which is where a lot of my paternal family has lived for over 100 years. And there's a cemetery there where there's a lot of my family has been buried. Okay. So last week, my dad's cousin who lives currently in Shanghai flew to Thailand, got my dad's ashes and took them to India and buried them in this family cemetery in northern India. And when my dad's cousin, who's basically like an uncle to me, did this last week, he took some videos and shared it with our family. And long story, but essentially my dad represented a lot of gifts and a lot of hurt, like most humans do. Okay. But my dad was in a lot of ways a representation of a lot of colonialist ways of being. So, but also somebody who gave a lot to the world and really wanted to be a healer and was a healer in a lot of ways. But there were a lot of things that needed to be healed regarding my dad. And even the act of bringing his ashes to the cemetery in India was like a returning of this being, the soul who had in a sense been sort of ostracized, literally returning him to the family, right? So when my dad's cousin was burying him and created this video of the little ceremony that he did, he went essentially grave by grave by grave by grave of our ancestors and spoke out loud to my dad, welcoming him back into the place of our family and going ancestor by ancestor, naming each one and welcoming my dad to them, right? And so it was this most profound moment for me of getting it, how deeply key it is that even as we, in a sense, or literally let go of maybe the hurts of our ancestral line or the hurts of our past or our world, the healing and the letting go is important. And the way my dad's cousin did this was with such intentional love and holding of all of it, right? All at the same time, that my dad was not a perfect human, and nobody is. And at the same time that is true, he was very consciously and intentionally welcoming my dad home.
Beautiful.
And directly said, "We love you, welcome home." Period. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it feels similar to what you're saying, is, there's like the both and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Martha, firstly, much kindness for your dad's transition, and may he journey well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful to hear, the work is not rigid, and we are in a process of remembering of how to honor the dead, how to help them transition, how to help them ancestralize without being too jargony, but to be elevated, be in a healed state, and to be part of the well of the collective of ancestors, the well ones. We are in a process of remembering because, perhaps certain institutions have denied us the birthright of relating with our ancestors. And, the framework that I discovered was one that has been developed by Dr. Daniel Fur, who's from the United States. He's a doctor of psychology. And he's the founder of an organization called Ancestral Medicine and the author of the book with the same title. And it's on ancestral lineage healing. And it's interesting because the framework that Daniel has developed to these people, much respect and appreciation to him and them, as being the puzzle piece I didn't know I was looking for. And, how we companion clients to do this work of ancestral healing. My work is centered around agency, as you said in the description, self-empowerment, sovereignty. This is a core value of mine, and all my work is centered around this one thing, one word, this one idea, agency, whether it's self-healing, self-growth, self-transformation. It's really important to me. And so the agency is left to the client and their people. The ancestors do the heavy lifting. And we go through the framework. I guide the client to connect with only their well ancestors. I'll speak a little bit to the principles of the work in a moment. In a culturally sensitive way that is safe, slowed down, embodied, and practical. What I want to say is with this work is if you're not getting benefits from the work, then stop doing it. This work is a languaging, and there's no panacea, one pill that fixes all malaise. We need to, in the journey of healing, growth, and transformation, it's not linear. It's cyclical, and we might find that it resonates with us right off the bat. That's good. Go with that then. But if not, maybe it's not time for that just yet. So, we start by, just like we do with the living, if you're confused about how to relate with our ancestors, let's call it the dead, especially in cultures such as ours, where death and dying is often done behind closed doors and kept behind closed doors. If you're confused about how to navigate in this work with the ancestors, then it's very similar to working with the living. So setting boundaries is an important part, just like we set boundaries with the living. And I also help clients to reestablish their sense of agency and sovereignty, because we do have interference with those who have died and are not yet in a well state. Yeah, they can impact our lives that very directly. And through the framework, we also bring awareness. We shine light on some of the challenges and burdens, the traumas that many of us are down lineage from, and how this, in an epigenetic way, might manifest in our own bodies, in our own lives, personally, and in our living family systems. But we work with the well ancestors to bring healing in this regard, also on a blood-bone DNA level to us personally. And so, as I mentioned earlier, to bring the balance, we also bring awareness to the gifts, strengths, and resiliencies. And we focus on embodying these intentionally as a way to bring healing personally, and again, to our living family relationships, and generationally to our children and grandchildren, to those coming after us. So, in closing for now, some of the principles of ancestral healing, as we've learned this framework, is not all the dead are equally well. The dead can impact the living, and the living can impact the dead. The dead can change, and something remains after death of the body. One more thing, when we've been doing, like me, and like I'm sure many of your the ones listening to and or watching this video, when there's a feeling of stuckness despite extensive work that has been done with a therapist, the feeling perhaps emerges that you're carrying a problem that is not part of your lived experience. This is often an indication of challenges and burdens passed on from one generation to another. And this is the place where ancestral healing work begins. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a few questions.
Sure.
One would be, if we take a big step back, what would you say your ultimate goal is with regard to ancestral healing? What's the end, the hope? Once we're doing this, where are we heading? Where are you hoping heading?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Right off the bat, I sense that the right response is, it's not up to me. I am a vehicle, and I work in close relation to my healed ancestors and other powers that guide and back my life. It's important to name that. Helps keep me regular sized, keeps my ego at bay. And if I were to allow myself to be bigger, then oftentimes we might play small in this world because we're afraid of the beautiful power of our gifts that we inherit. So if I allow myself to be bigger than that, I would say this feeling of being born into a complexity of trauma can feel very heavy, can feel very burdensome, whether we are conscious of it or not. And so my intention with this work is to help people reconnect with their well ancestors. And when we do this work, we bring healing to the past, to the present, and the future. We heal the challenges and burdens, and we draw a line so that these are brought to awareness. These are worked through in a way that is in a safe and slow down way, in a way that clients can manage it in the moment, to ensure that this is not passed on intergenerationally, because if we don't do the work, that is the consequence. And so we heal the past in that way, and the present, because it impacts our living systems, us personally, and I've seen it in my own life and the lives of my clients. And then magically it starts to infuse this healing work in living family members. And then once we stop the trajectory of passing down these intergenerational burdens, challenges, we heal the future in that way too. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm.
So The next question arising for me is what is a well ancestor and how do you know? I mean, I'm sure there's many layers to that, and
sure
take a whole course on that, but
yeah
what's the simple answer?
yeah so in simple terms, the troubled dead, people might have when they transitioned, from this lifetime, they might have taken a lot of burdens and challenges and unintegrated trauma and life experience with them. They might have died in a situation that was very traumatic for them and for the living. They might have been forgotten by their own people. Like many of us, I believe, are afraid of dying because we will be forgotten, because we've been not allowed to practice this birthright of ancestral connection. So we feel like the other ones are going to forget us too. And when you mention your loving dad and the beautiful ritual that your family member did, when we cry, the tears and the sadness and grief help these ones to become ancestralized, help them feel the sense of connection and belonging, help them feel loved. This helps them journey well too. So with this work, we encourage connection and we facilitate the connection with one of the healed ones, the ones who lived in relative harmony before the troubles began. This one generally becomes an ancestral guide. And then through a process, we bring healing to the entire lineage with elevated ones. And we don't encourage engaging with unwell ancestors until the healing has been brought and the lineage is elevated. I hope that answers the question somewhat. And it's, you're right, it's very nuanced. It presents itself in different ways in the moment when we are doing the sessions. And the beautiful thing is we have a tendency to think, we need to roll up our sleeves and do the heavy work. But when it comes to work in the spirit realm, the elevated ancestors and all the powers that are affiliated with the lineages, whether carnate or incarnate, elemental forces, the waters, the mountains, the rivers. I mean, we really embrace an animist way of navigating life and this work. There are many more allies than we know of that we can tap into and be relational with, and that can support our lives and work and projects. So I hope that brings a little bit more clarity.
And so two things. One, I could imagine for a lot of people to find the elevated ones or the healed ancestors might mean going very, 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 very far back.
Right. Indeed. Yeah, we encourage during this time of making a connection with a guide, it needs to be someone who's in an elevated state already. And this generally, means going far back before many of the troubles and harms have happened. And
in my own personal experience with people who have crossed in my lifetime, in this lifetime, I can think of two whose spirits I experience as what I would call elevated. That neither of them are biologically related to me, but they're both part of my family, right? So does that, I don't know, would you consider them ancestors, or are they allies in another way, or
yeah, absolutely. I'd say yes is the short answer. We can have adopted ancestors as well, adopted cultures. ancestors of place. This is why I'd mentioned that I've called 3 countries home outside of South Africa, because some of my ancestors being European, Anglo-Saxon settler colonialists who came and settled in this place here, Kamisa, South Africa. You know, I do have a genetic connection through my ancestry, but I also have a connection with the culture and the land because I've lived there and I've invested and immersed myself in that culture, just like I did in England. For similar reasons, my path would take me there. I only realized with the wonderful 2020 vision of the gift of hindsight, it's clear to me now why I went there. And when I lived in Asia, you know, for almost 9 years, I have immersed myself in that culture, learned the language, Chinese Mandarin, you know, did martial arts there. And I really feel like that's almost an adopted culture and ancestral connection that I also enjoy. So yes, yeah. I would like to just speak to, you know, nowadays, you know, people like this question, you know, what's in it for me? So in terms of the benefits that I've seen with my own, in my own life doing this work and for my clients and others, when I engage with peers of mine who are doing work of ancestral healing, you know, I mentioned setting healthy boundaries. This is really important, and we haven't really grown up. I haven't grown up with a framework of how to manage any spirit interference. You know, so this is really important, that setting healthy boundaries is a benefit of this work. You know, only engaging with ancestors who are in a healed state. And then what's really important as well is the deep sense of identity and belonging. Again, I reiterate, Maya Angelou says, if we don't know where we've come from, we won't know where we're going. And for especially people of mixed ancestries, and there are many, many more than who would care to admit that they have mixed ancestry. And the idea of, you know, this question that remains, you know, who am I? Who am I really? And where do I belong? And so this work is profound in that way. It certainly has been for me and many clients that I work with. And so, of course, this personal, family, and cultural healing, and individual healing begets collective healing. This is really, really important, you know. So ancestral healing is an act of compassion, self-compassion and compassion for others. And so, and this is compassion for the living and for the dead, you know, the very ones that have given us life. And when we do this work, you know, there's also compassion for the collective, and it impacts the greater collective that we're also part of. The relationships that we are part of, the living family systems that we are part of, and wider field, the greater collective, including the natural environment and all sentient beings. It calls for and encourages an alignment of one's own life purpose, you know, by, on the one hand, harvesting the wisdom of trauma of our that our people had to endure. And on the other hand, by dialing up the gifts we also inherit from our ancestors and bring these gifts into the world through our work and other projects. And then relationality, to get connection and support from our own ancestors in times where we see a lot of relational poverty due to growing individualization and isolation. Doing this work is also me preparing for my own death, for the time that I transition, and preparing my welcoming to the collective of well ancestors and becoming an ancestor myself. And then in the work, inevitably, what shows up is a ritual around forgiveness of them and us, and helping us tap into a well of gratitude and the benefits of doing the work of forgiveness and gratitude come with these practices. There are many benefits that come with this kind of work. And then resilience and support during times of rapid change and uncertainty, i.e. our current times. This is the time to do this work. I feel like we've been called, and I feel like we are the ones we've been waiting for. And so it's beautiful to see how prevalent this work is becoming. And in a moment, I'll speak a little bit to that. And then joy and happiness. I spoke about the heaviness of carrying and working through trauma and distress. When that starts to lift, there opens up spaces in ourselves for love and joy to return. And so as we navigate the challenges of the present, we have to be intentional about bringing awareness to cultivating joy in our lives, which is also always here. And ancestral healing is a powerful framework for the integration of profound life experiences. Personally, I've just come back from an annual 10-day silent meditation retreat. So to integrate some of the wisdom that arises, ancestral healing and work with the guides can be really, really profound. Also plant medicines, rites of passage journeys like vision quests, the integration which sometimes is lacking, can be met really well by engaging one's guides. What is the meaning for this in my life right now? How can I translate this into something really practical that I can do? I'll create a little bit of a pause there before I really want to speak to what others are saying about ancestral healing also. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was curious, is there, and you can say no to this question.
Yeah, sure.
Is there, or any question,
Mm.
agencies, say self-agency, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, what I'm wondering is there something about your own personal journey with ancestral healing that you called or comfortable sharing?
Sure. I went into I don't need to think about that long and hard at all. But I started a business with a dear friend of mine. We were at uni together, and we lived in the same neighborhood. And he's been part of my journey from when I was at university. And you'd notice the trajectory of my life, living in 3 different countries, and we'd often have long discussions into the night. And one of the themes that were prevalent in my life whilst I was still traveling is this idea of identity and belonging, of home. And he would often say, yeah, you've been searching for home for a long time. And so he's right. And working with a practitioner with ancestral healing before I became a certified practitioner myself, there was a beautiful example, a profound moment when I realized that I had found peace. Basically, I see the earth as my home. The road is my home because people have embraced me and I've embraced their culture. And I felt very much like I belong in places outside of the country where I was born. So then I realized just recently that I'd been holding the story, holding the burden of not belonging or a sense of not being home for my people. Because I've done the healing around this already. I know that. And so this is a beautiful example of how we might carry on a body, blood, bone, DNA level some of the stories that are not part of our lived experience. And this is where ancestral healing can be really profound. Yeah.
Yes. And the other thing that was coming up for me when you're talking about the benefit of doing ancestral healing with regard to it being one key to us being present, to be in the world in whatever way we're needed to be here. I think that's part of what you were saying. For me, again, personally, with the death of my dad, one thing that I'm getting told very clearly from the spirit world is that my dad, I'm not consciously, certainly, but on some level, I think transitioned when he did, because something that is happening for me now is, since he has died, I'm getting told very clearly, it's like there's been a bottle top in the top of my head. It's hard to explain it. Like a corkscrew, right? And a few weeks ago, I was told, okay, take the corkscrew out of your head and just allow all of your, this word would be karma, whatever word you want to put to that, allow all of your ways of being, not only with your dad, but with your, in all lifetimes, through your whole family ancestry, through all time, space, throughout all of existence. The death of my dad, it felt like it was this opportunity to just go and let all of it just rush out of my body and my being, so that I can, what the spirit world says to me is, so you can be fully present and not be carrying on a particular template for engaging with the masculine, the feminine, the trauma of the world, the trauma of your own life, the trauma of your own ancestry. When you're able to let that go, then your body can reorient to whatever it is that the divine needs you to be now and now, and like in each moment, whatever that happens to be. And so part of my work clearly is this symposium, right? Holding space for the healing of our relationship to gender and sexuality. So it's pretty important for me not to be stuck in one way of relating to the masculine, for example, right?
Beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, coming to me.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's lovely. What I have a sense of, we live in a very polarized world, very binary. And this creates some of the problems we see in the world, this idea of right and wrong, us and them. But as Rumi said, between right doing and wrong doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there.
Yeah.
This is beautiful wisdom that comes from your ones, your people. Yeah. Of how to engage with the work now. Things are different. Things are changing. Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. The paradox mindset is important in the program that Wendy, another business partner, and I have developed and facilitated in taking into corporate spaces, rooting through change that you mentioned earlier. Paradox mindset is one of the 5 modules. It's so important that we need to get out of our binary thinking, because there's a deep well of wealth to be found in the fertile space between what's the binary of right and wrong. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Martha, for sharing that. And so there's, I find in this work, we, the reason I did a guided practice is to get out of the thinking mind. We spend a lot of time in the left brain and the intellect. I also think it brings a lot of challenges to us when we look at things from a singular dimension perspective, from the perspective of the intellect only, when there's so much other intelligence and wisdom that is accessible to us. And but I like to speak to that. Buckminster Fuller says you don't create change by protesting the existing reality. To create change, you design and build a model that makes the existing one obsolete. And now, and so I don't want to, what's traditionally been done for thousands of years, I don't want to totally discard that. I want to say, let's see what's good from that and take that as we move forward in a very different context. Einstein is another who said, we can't design solutions with the same thinking that created the problem in the first place. And so I like to meet the intellect of people who might go, what is this relating with our ancestors? You know, am I making this stuff up? And first, you know, one of my teachers, Thomas Hubel, says ancestral healing work increases the resources for our personal healing. And he says impacts of this personal healing start to positively impact living family systems. Now, from the voices that I'd like to include for people's work that I really respect, all of these have a science background. This is, you know, the realm of, if you like, the intellect. And so it's interesting, and I'm very excited and enthused when science starts to talk about and incorporate traditional wisdom into their work. So, you know, I love the work of Dr. Gabo Mate, addiction and trauma specialist, you know, and I quote, he says, we need to understand the historical and cultural context of individuals and communities in order to understand and heal from the ways in which trauma is passed down through generations. Yes. And he goes on to say, he emphasizes the role of trauma, stress, and adverse childhood experiences in shaping physical and mental health, and the need to address them in order to heal. Sandra Ingerman, who's got a master's of psychology and a very seasoned shamanic practitioner and teacher, she said, by honoring our ancestors as our partners, we can improve our living relationships, catalyze the cultural shifts we need in the world, heal ourselves and the planet. Dr. Bayo Kamalafe says, your life's work is an intergenerational project. And of course, my teacher, Daniel Fuhr, is a doctor of psychology. And yet he has and much respect for therapists and the work that they do in the world, the important work that they do in the world also. You know, he's developed this framework. So, you know, I have a sense that, you know, we are coming a little bit to the end of this conversation for now. And I would like to close from my side, Martha, by reading a piece from a book by Thomas More, a theologian, a psychotherapist, and one who paints beautifully vivid pictures with words. And his words have been a wonderful companion to me when I've gone through a dark night of the soul. If I may, this is from Thomas's book, Care of the Soul. And the subheading is Retreat from the Modern World. Is basically speaking about the impacts of modernity on physical, emotional, and mental well-being from the stresses of modernity, right? And then he says, he remarked that in his tower, he felt close to his ancestors. Another traditional concern of spirituality, writes Thomas More. In the winter of 1955 to 56, he writes, I chiseled the names of my paternal ancestors on 3 stone tablets and placed them in the courtyard of the tower. I painted the ceiling with motifs from my own and my wife's arms. When I was working on the stone tablets, I became aware of fateful links between me and my ancestors. I feel very strongly that I am under the influence of things or questions which were left incomplete and unanswered by my parents and grandparents and more distant ancestors. Close of quote, end of quote. This remarkable passage, writes Thomas More, demonstrates how much Carl Jung's inner and outer worlds were in fruitful dialogue with each other. When I came across that, we know how respected Carl Jung is for his work in psychotherapy. It felt like a gift to me when I discovered his understanding of the importance of the work of ancestral healing and how they impact us and how we can impact them. And yeah, that's what I have to bring today, Martha. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The one thing I wanted to just put in there also is that my background is as a psychotherapist. And that's most of what I did for most of 20 years. And I was a clinical social worker, and my training and all of my experience was with extreme trauma and attachment stuff. So I worked primarily with families involved with the Child Protective Services in inner city Washington, D.C., and then where I live now in Santa Barbara, California. So I worked with, some of the scariest of the scary trauma of our planet. And I grew up in parts of the world where the trauma, I would say, is even more extreme. So what I witnessed and heard about all of my life is very extreme trauma. But as a psychotherapist, I learned all of the main ways that traditional in the United States, traditional psychotherapy tends to address trauma. And a huge component of the work that I feel called to do, that I am called to do now, is essentially acknowledging acknowledging the gifts that set of disciplines brings into our world, and acknowledges that there are major gaps that when I was a psychotherapist, I mean, just to name very minimal things. Number one, it's pretty much forbidden to talk about the spiritual at all. Need to be secular, unless the client brings up spirituality with you. And that's appropriate. You don't want to, proselytize to a client. That's not okay. But I felt like I had to split in my own self as a human. I had to split into the secular side of me, the intellectual side of me, and then I had to put all of my spiritual side over here, right? So I couldn't I felt like I wasn't allowed to integrate all of who I actually am and what I bring as a healing presence to my clients' lives. So that doesn't feel good to me. That's part of why I'm not doing that anymore. But number two, in the psychotherapy world, there's this very strong emphasis on only working with quote unquote, statistically proven techniques, which are primarily the things you can primarily measure enough to qualify as statistically significantly impacting somebody, tend to be cognitive behavioral techniques, which again, those have many gifts, but they are missing. We're not just cognition and behavior, right? We are we're not just our brain. We are our brain, our body, our heart, our soul, our whole being. We are the earth. We are the cosmos. We are the divine. We are source. We are our ancestors. We are all of it, everything. And so, that's one of the things that the spirit world is very clear that I need to be doing in my own work, is holding space for the reality that, again, the psychotherapy world has wonderful gifts, and we have to incorporate so much more. And it feels like your work and ancestral healing is one of these key components, that we absolutely need on this planet for so many reasons.
Sure. And it's wonderful to see how the work is growing. In my opinion, there are not enough practitioners to manage the backlog for this work. And so I'm really honored to have been called to, as a part of the work that I do with clients, that here's this puzzle piece that I didn't know I was looking for. Really honored and an appreciation to ancestral medicine and all the peers, the network there. So yeah.
Beautiful. So if people are feeling drawn to you, to your work, if they feel drawn to this, to ancestral healing in general, I can imagine people being drawn to both doing the healing work themselves and also maybe feeling called to do the work in the world. And I know they go together. I know you probably can't do the second one without doing the first one, but what's the first step? What if somebody wants to go further, what should they do?
Yeah, well, I would say that, find a practitioner, one that has, on ancestral medicine, on the website. There are a list of practitioners there. There are quite a few great people doing wonderful work of varied backgrounds, disciplines, life experiences. But I would connect with a practitioner. It's important sometimes to do work with a practitioner, especially if you're new to it, so that they can help you establish those boundaries and just kind of make sure that it's done in a slowed down, embodied, ritually safe way. And I would recommend that, find someone that you resonate with, find someone that shares ancestry with you, potentially shares similar life experiences, challenges, burdens, traumas, distresses. And or if you can't, then find someone who is connected in some way to the land and the ancestors of place where you're situated. So if you've moved away from your country of origin, find out someone who has some kind of connection with your country of origin, with the lands and the cultures there. So yeah, that's how I'd go about it. Yeah.
And is there a specific resource for finding people like
Sure. Yeah, ancestral medicine, the website, you can do a simple Google search. It's there. As an example, I'm honored to be one of only 2 so far certified practitioners on the African continent. This is growing. Daniel and the team are doing amazing work. We've got a current intake that the region of focus happens to be Africa and the diaspora. Really excited about that. In fact, I've been invited to do a talk in our continued education series next month. So yeah, and trust that the right one will find you. When we hear the call of our ancestors, when we heed that call, for example, of clicking on a talk with this title, Ancestral Healing, know that our ancestors are looking to connect with us too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes. And then what about you? How do people reach out to you? What are you offering in the world? What would you like people to know about your work?
Yeah. So, my work has mostly been through marketing, through word of mouth. And that's been amazing. I have provided my email address to you, Martha, and my LinkedIn profile. People can connect with me through those platforms. So currently, I offer services. Like I said, my work is centered around agency, self-empowerment. That's really important. And some of the ways that I do that is, we've designed a program called Rooting Through Change that we offer to organizations. And, if people want to find out more, they can reach out. I obviously do the work of ancestral healing. I facilitate deep listening circles and racial affinity groups. And the work has brought profound impact in people's lives. I do mentoring and coaching one-on-one. Yeah, perhaps the next time we speak, I will mention a little bit more about some other projects that have been happening that are in the emergent phase, nascent phase. That is really important, and it's around the youth and the support that they require as the custodians of humanity and our futures. Really, really important, and I've been passionate about this work with youth and offering them the support that well-intentioned caregivers maybe don't have the capacity to because of the stresses of modernity. Yeah. So yeah, lots going on. And I just want to be guided by my people. You know, I imagine there'll be kind of a waiting list for the ancestral healing work, but the right person will come, you know, because there are quite a few projects happening. And I just want to be guided by my people of where I can best bring my gifts. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other thing you feel called to name or say?
Yeah, I just want to thank the ones listening to and watching this video. May truth continue to find us. I appreciate the kind of people who would spend time on a video like this. So probably bringing some really good work into the world. And so I just want to, without knowing you directly, those ones, just to say thank you. Continue to shine your light and bring your good work into the world. And may you find the courage to engage with your so many powers that can back your life, conscious and unconscious ways. There's much there, support that we can draw on. So may you be guided there. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Martha. Appreciate you, and thank you for the opportunity to add a voice here. Yeah.